Good Sunday afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. How are we doing? As you can see, we are going to be covering the topic of calling. But first, I want to address some of the few questions that we got over on Reddit yesterday. The first one was at what level I played when I was active. I would say that I was in a top 5 Norwegian team, more or less. We had the possibility of beating every single team in Europe at the time, but we weren't consistent enough as a team because we did stay together for quite some time, but I don't know, our performance wasn't. We did good against a good team and bad against the bad teams. It just had to do with our playstyle, I guess. How long I've played? I've played for about 6 or 7 years in total. I have accumulated approximately 3,500 hours of in-game time in Counter-Strike Source, and in Global Offensive not so much. I think I'm only at like 400 or something, but that's the beauty of Counter-Strike. You can go from 1.6 to Source to Go without actually losing too much skill. So this time around I mostly play gathers. So, calling. What is calling? Well, the caller is the in-game leader. He is the one with the most responsibility for how your team performs, and he makes all the decisions where you are supposed to go. He's the guy that is calling the attacks and uses the information that your team gathers in order to make the calls. But it's also important for you as a player. If you are not a caller, you need to know what kind of information the caller is looking for, so that you can give him the appropriate information during a match. So basically, a lot of people think the caller is just meant to, when you have the free time, you're supposed to call out attacks, etc. A lot of people think that that's all the caller does, and we're gonna go for, because on the CT side the caller really doesn't do a whole lot. I'm gonna jump in game. So on the T side, the caller really doesn't do a whole. The CT side, the caller doesn't do a whole lot. That was difficult to say, apparently. But on the T side, there's loads of things to take into consideration, and we're gonna touch a bit on those things. So basically, what we're gonna be focusing on is something known as holes in the defense. We talked about it in the in one of the previous videos briefly, but now we're gonna dive in and really what are holes. Well, that totally depends on the CD setup. If they are going with, say, 2B, 1 mid. Can I pull up the overview? No. 1 catwalk and 1 long. A spot is gonna have a difficult time, and if either this catwalk or long underperforms, then of course you want to exploit those locations. If they are going with, say, a more common approach, which is 1 errand boy, 1 catwalk, 1 long, or 2 catwalk, 1 long, or 2 long, 1 catwalk, whatever, then B and mid is going to be vulnerable. So it's your job as a team to find out where they are weak and exploit it as much as possible until they shift one person over. Basically, a very good example is, I used to do this a lot in my days as a caller. We would always, there were 2 flashes that always were executed, whether we were going outside mid or catwalk. So there was one that was just as you cross this corner, you flashed the wall and you flashed deep. Always. And it was always 1 flash deep onto catwalk, regardless of where we went. So basically we would just go like, okay, 3 rounds in a row we would if we knew that mid was vulnerable, we would do a B split, meaning that you have 3 guys running outside mid with this area smoked. I can show you that smoke another time. And you have 2 guys coming out B. Okay. Now, after 3 rounds, the CT counter-terrorists, they might have shifted one person from A down to mid, or another guy into B, depending on how their caller wants to do it. So, what you might want to do then, when you feel that, okay, I think they have shifted now, they don't want to lose any more rounds just because they have a weak spot there. So basically, what you do is you do the exactly the same thing. You have this flash that comes as you run through. It's a bit tricky flash. You have to like run sideways and aim like here. And you do the deep flash, and of course you have the smoke there. And then the 3 guys, the 2 of your guys run up here. 1 guy stands ready with the flash. Flash stairs so that these guys can run, of course. And then your 2 other guys are just outside long, slowly moving in, waiting for the flashes, and of course they run long. So it's an A split suddenly. And then when you are in a position where you can read when your opponent is actually rotating and shifting position, shifting the weight of the team, because there is always going to be a hole. At least in the good maps, there's always going to be a hole in the defense that you can exploit. It can either be because of underperforming players on the enemy team, or simply just because that they are weighted differently around the map, meaning that there are fewer people on B than on A, and that it's easier to take one of the 2 routes. Mid can also be one of those holes. So when you know those holes and you know how to exploit them, you are really in a driver's seat as a terrorist caller, simply because you dictate the pace of the match. You dictate basically everything. If you get in a position where you can know exactly when they are going to shift positions, you're gonna win the match. If you manage to confuse your opponents, meaning the entire team, so much with your calling that they have no idea, if you based on the smokes and flash that comes, whether you are going catwalk or mid every single time, you're gonna win, because they, like I said, information is vital. But if you call 2 flashes out mid, 1 flash catwalk as a CT every round, that's not helpful for your team. They have no idea where you're actually going, where the terrorist is going, because you're calling the same information every single time, but they are going 2 separate ways. So you got to be prepared for both of them, and that means that the 2 sides aren't really getting the support they need in time. Because let's face it, catwalk gets support from A, from long, and mid really usually gets support from either errand boy position or catwalk, or possibly B. But if there's just 1 guy at B, then B is a freebie. A lot of people actually fail at that. They try to help out their guy in mid, and they are shot in the back because they don't realize it's a B split, or they thought that they wouldn't come yet, or whatever. So knowing the holes in defense and knowing how to exploit that is really important. So yeah, as a caller, you want to use the freeze time to tell people whether they should buy or whatever, and you should also be telling everybody what to do. Now, it's very, very important that you know of the spawn rotation system. Basically, if you find out that you have great B spawns, you have 1 guy spawning here, your entire team is spawning towards B. Now that's let's say that's round 1. Okay, and the next round you're spawning sort of like here, and let's say the next round you have a perfect A spawn. I'm gonna type something in. I'll have to move my thingy over here actually. Let's just... Woo. Sorry, lads. Okay, so round 1, you get spawn 1. In round 2, you get spawn 2. It's very simple, right? In round 3, you get spawn 3. And again, round 4, you get spawn 4. Now here's the tricky bit. In round 5, you get the same spawn as you did in the first round. There's only 4 spawns that you can get from one side in one match before a restart, and the same thing applies to the counter-terrorists. So if one of your guys just rushes out on long and says, "Hey, he was really slow on long," you know that in next 4 rounds, when there's been 4 rounds, sorry, you can actually do a 5-man rush on long, and you can get in a good position to kill him, because if your guy noticed that he can stand here and almost get here before the guy on A crossed the corner, simply because he had a really bad spawn to get to site, then you can exploit that as hell. You can do a 5-man rush and get long for free, do preemptive smoke, jump over, pre-flash catwalk, and you can have a free bomb plant. So what I usually do, and you gotta find your own way of doing it, but I usually try to the first it's hard to like experiment with it, because you can lose rounds experimenting with it, for sure you can. But the first, let's say you lost gun round, okay? Then there's no real reason, except maybe getting a bomb plant, to do anything constructive as to trying to win the round, the next 2 rounds. You just want you just want to die so that you can get your money and your AKs. So what I usually do, because this is vital information that can gain you 6 or 7 rounds just because of that information. So what I try to do is I try to scatter my players all across the map. Basically, let's say we lost round 1, round 2. I say one guy rushes out B, one guy rushes out mid, one guy rushes out catwalk, and one guy rushes out long. Now I might decide, okay, I'm just gonna tell the bomb guy to wait over at Regnum. I'm just gonna tell him to wait here, because if there is a hole, just run there, and we can hopefully get a plant. And I might do the same with the second round, and then I know that on spawns 2 and 3 we have advantages there and there. And now we can exploit that, and then we can exploit that so much as that it gets holes in the defense. Now I'm gonna change the map to nuke, simply because there are, especially in nuke, there are situations where a spawn is so important that it can make or break the entire game. So basically, on the T side, where you run when you have a good spawn isn't really that important. But as a CT, you need to be aware of it. We're gonna have a restart here as well. So, come on, that slow thing is. Yeah, get the Tech 9. So it doesn't really matter. But as a CT, you need to be aware that if they rush on round 3 and they are insanely fast to either get to ramp or get to A side, inner side, then you need to be aware of that, and you need to call it like, heads up guys, they're gonna rush pretty fast if they are rushing, so be prepared pre-flash and everything. Another vital thing is the spawns apply to the counter-terrorists as well. So if you have a bad spawn, let's say you are holding Squeaky. Squeaky is like probably the one position where it's vital to be early, if you are too late at Squeaky, they are going to get downstairs and get a bomb plant. So you need to get Squeaky covered as fast as humanly possible. So basically, there's a lot of ways to do this, and I'm not saying I found the miracle way or anything like that, but what you can do is a very normal way to hold is one guy holding yard, one guy holding Squeaky, one guy up on the doggy or whatever, holding the hut, and then you have one guy ramp, and probably you have another guy who is support ramp and support inner sight, which is basically the errand boy. I usually very much enjoy having an errand boy in every CD setup, because that minimizes the holes that you have, actually, because you have one guy who can fill 2 positions within a short time frame. But basically what you can do is you can have the CD player who has the best spawn out of those 3, basically Squeaky, Doggy, and Errand Boy. That guy takes Squeaky, because he's the one who will get in position in time. So that, and then if you say, okay, they are not brushing Squeaky, and then you just communicate, you take over Squeaky, blah blah blah, and the errand boy gets back into position. So basically, the guy who holds Squeaky, if he doesn't have the best spawn, he will just swap it, either the errand boy or the doggy guy, and for like the first 10 seconds. This is to prevent you being surprised by Squeaky rush, and they are getting. If you find yourself that they are getting down the vent without your guy and Squeaky being able to stop them, it's not because he is a bad player and he can't do like this, 2 shots to the head and he's dead. Everybody can do that. It's because they had a good spawn, your guy Squeaky had a bad spawn, and they were able to get down and get a free bomb plant that way, which is a shame, of course, for your team, because that's a round that you really didn't deserve to lose most of the time. So I wanna brush up on something else as well. You gotta find your own way of doing things, like the positions I call out, and the ways of finding the hole. How many? It's not like there's not a cookie cutter recipe. You don't have to. It's not like, okay, I rushed B 5 times, then I rushed A 1 time, 2 times, and then I rushed B 1 more time. The goal of the caller is understanding your opponent, like fully understanding your opponent. The better you understand your opponent, the better you can predict how he or she, for that matter, will react to the things you are going to do, and then you can predict what they are going to respond with, and you can exploit that. So that is basically the overall goal, but you also have another goal, which is to lead your team. So of course you gotta be assertive when you call out attacks. You gotta be that arrogant douchebags that says, "Shut up, I'm talking." And the best advice I can give you is, when there's something important that you need to tell your team, repeat it. Don't just say it once and expect everybody to get it. Say it 2 or 3 times. We could be like, okay guys, let's do an A split, and you say it 1 more time. Okay guys, we're doing A split. And it's not because they are dumb or whatever, not paying attention. It's just because in the heat of the moment, if one of your teammates are in an engagement, they might not hear it at all, or they might actually be so focused on taking down their opponent that they aren't processing that information at all. So repeating important information once or twice, and this even applies to just giving normal information as a player, is really useful. As long as it's important, you don't have to say, "I'm rotating." That can possibly be said. Rotating to B. I'm rotating to B. That could possibly be said once, twice. But if you get a file where you have evil geniuses or whichever good team out there, you will often say, hear people rotating, like saying things 3-4 times, really fast, just to emphasize that we understand that you could be so focused at what the engagement you're in right now that you might not even pick up the fact that I'm coming to help you. So yeah. Alright, so lastly we are going to go over the caller checklist. So this is like the to-dos and do-nots of the caller. You always gotta give concrete information. You gotta let your team know that you have a plan. You cannot be, let's say one of your teammates says, let's say your name is John. John, what are we gonna do? And you can never ever reply, I don't know, just do something. Or I don't know, just go shoot some headshots. If you do that, your team will lose respect for you as a caller. So you gotta give precise and concrete information. If you just want your team to try to get some picks, then say that. You go, okay, use this information, try to get some easy kills so that we can exploit those. Say that. But you're saying with assertiveness, and you maintain the respect of your team, which is vital because they have to listen to everything you say without question if you are to work as a team. So another thing you can never do, and this doesn't just apply to quality, this applies to everybody, don't bring up the previous round. If it's in a prac or if it's in a match, never bring up the previous round. If there is something, if there is a problem or something that you can improve, write it down and then either take it up as a team or take it up with that individual player after the match. Like, hey bro, I noticed something that you could improve. And it's not like, if you are aiming to be good, you can't take criticism personally. You can't like be, what? You're saying I'm not good? Like, no, you're on my team. Of course you're good because I'm perfect. But but you can always get better. So it's like, take it up with the person afterwards. And if you're saying like, ah, dude, why didn't you do that? You're creating bad vibes. And trust me, bad vibes they can destroy your team. They can destroy your match to 100%. And so yeah, don't blame team members during a match. Is basically what I'm saying. Preferably don't blame them at all. But if there's something that has to be dealt with, deal with it personally and one-on-one. So I said earlier that I often used to enjoy just ramming mid and catwalk. But you gotta know when that doesn't work. If they have found a good way to counter that, you cannot just keep hitting that same tactic over and over and expect it to work. You gotta have enough insight to know when you have to change things up. And let's say, and this is the beauty of recognizing when you're messing up, because if you know that you're messing up, they might expect you to do the same lousy tactic again. Now this is when you can exploit it. Really, okay, let's say you have for some reason been doing the flash through the roof and then rushing inner sight, okay? Along with flashes and whatnot inside and smokes and the whole shebang, okay? And you have had guys going yard through main and whatnot. Okay, so let's say you've been doing that, okay? So you have had two guys running through main, you had two guys rushing through hot, and you had one guy doing the flashes. So let's say you do everything like that, but this time instead of actually running in main, you send your two guys down to lower side. The guy on the flashes and the smokes go exactly as they used to do, but instead of rushing out, you have one guy just peeking here and quickly peeking here, for instance. And this is not I'm not saying this tax works, I haven't tried it, but it's something that you could do and spin off of. So you can fake inner sight and go ramp and down without actually using too many resources, because the guy from ramp would either be already starting to backstab you or running around to help out at inner sight. So at least if there's a rush called and you have been doing the same thing over and over and they are expecting it, then it's easier to be led to run up. So yeah, you gotta know when you are failing and how to use the fact that you are failing in your favor. If you can get inside your opponent's mind and mess with it, you're for sure to win the match. So yeah, you're basically ready to start trying to call in a few mixes. Be aware that the caller is usually the one with the most in-game experience. Not always, there are exceptions, but if you're a very fresh player, be aware that you're going to make a lot of mistakes, but your team needs to be aware of that, and you have to move forward as a team. So I wish you all the best. Try to practice some of these things, and I'll see you for the next episode of winGr Weekly. And have a nice day.